Hi everyone, and welcome back to more from Top 5. No, I'm not really used to doing that yet. Where we take a specific subject matter for Dune Imperium, and I give you my top 5 tips for how to improve your game. Today we're going to be continuing looking at the leaders for Uprising specifically, and it will be the turn for the Warmaster, Gurney Halleck. The loyal friend to Muad'Dib's father, the former Duke Leto, and once played by Patrick Stewart himself, this is not Gurney's first trip into Dune Imperium. Indeed, he used to be previously a part of the Imperium row in the original game, and truth be told, one of the better cards going, and that has actually transferred onto Uprising, where Gurney Halleck has built up a reputation of one of the most fearsome leaders in the entire game. Which is kind of fascinating, because when you look at it, there's not really a whole lot going on ability-wise, but it's once you start kind of looking under the hood, you realize there is actually a lot of innate power for Gurney, and not just in what he can do, but more so in just how often he can do it. Very, very fearsome on the field. Gurney, probably one of the best leaders in the game. So, let's have a look at Gurney's passive ability. Always smiling. Sounds so cheerful, doesn't it? On your reveal turn, if you have 6 or more strength of the conflict, 10 and 6 player, but we're not worried particularly about that, you gain an additional point of persuasion for your reveal. This is a lot better than it might look at first. I might think, well, persuasion, that's not doing a whole lot here. And maybe in the previous iterations of Dune Imperium, maybe it wouldn't make the biggest of differences. A couple of those real low-cost cards aren't that great. But in Uprising, the value of even the one-costers in this have improved significantly. So even on that front, it's definitely a significant boost. But it's the combination of persuasion to buy good cards and raw power in the battlefield that can be a real clincher for Gurney Halleck. We'll talk a bit more about that in detail a little bit later on in this video. But all I can say at the moment is always smiling. You want to get this off as much as humanely possible. There's a reason that in Rise of Ix for Dune Imperium, there's a tech that you can buy that does exactly this. That's how good an ability this can be. Now, the way that this ability works is actually a little funky. So it requires you having 6 or more strength in the conflict on your reveal turn. But of course, it doesn't specify how you get that strength. And that's because it doesn't matter. As long as you manage to get your battle counter up to the 6 mark or beyond, you get the extra persuasion. So that means you could decide you're just going to go to Arrakis, for example, put in those 3 troops. You know what? Totally good enough. However, you might be able to only have those 2 troops, and swords that you get on reveal also count towards this, so like your daggers in your initial deck. This can definitely encourage a couple of things. First of all, using your ring to obviously put in more troops can be really good. Means you can go to like Hagar Basin, for example, if you've got mega hooks, and even with absolutely no strength in hand, you can get hold of a worm for 3 strength, and you can get a troop in for 5. That way you just need 1 extra strength from anywhere, and you get the ability off. Stuff like that's really good. It can also promote going down a very sword-heavy deck as well, which is, you know, can be a little bit riskier, but obviously you're someone who can just look to absolutely must people for the battlefield. So cards like Shishakli, Leadership, Rebel Supply is also not the worst thing. That spice is helpful for passive generation, can be really good. Also, what's pretty useful, if you have access to the promo cards, you got Arrakis Vault, which I believe was a pre-order bonus with getting hold of Uprising. Beast Balls as well. This was the promo card that was released for the North Carolina Invitational. I don't know if they're going to do a print run at this at any point. I honestly don't know. Don't ask me that sort of question. But regardless, those swords in reveal add up a lot. And these are just a few examples. There is a little bit of a wild card that you've just got to be a touch careful of. It's great if you can get it working, and that is Chani. Chani's a really, very good card, and like one of the, I think, the funner cards in the game. But bear in mind that the swords on her card don't actually add to your strength for that round. You're retreating 2 troops to get +4 swords. Great for troop preservation and to kind of keep the effect going, but doesn't actually help you in the moment. But of course, there is the other side of it, which is Gurney can be really annoyingly good at not only targeting, putting pressure in combats, but also buying strong cards in the first place. Even Spice Was Flows was the back end of the game, for example, because of the way Always Smiling works. It's basically allowing you to get a heavy deploy from certain locations of the map without incurring any persuasion loss, which is really, really, really good. So, for example, you can turn a recon, just a standard basic card, but, you can go to Arrakis with a garrison, siege, research station, and you can just throw in troops and be at least net neutral, if not gaining persuasion from these card draws, because always smiling negates this cost being spent here. Obviously, you can make your ring even stronger. Sending cards with, like, Seek Allies, for example, like even the Desert Tactics round 1, you're gaining persuasion while going to the new Hardy Warriors. It's pretty wild, as it means that Gurney can, like, really threaten a lot of early conflicts, and still manage to get hold of, like, sort of decent 4-5 cost cards, Public Spectacles, your Strike Fleets, your cards like that, which can make him really, really annoying. So next up, let's look at Gurney Halleck's ring. It's as simple as you get. Use the ring, gain a troop. Just nothing fancy about it at all. Now, people that have played for Dune Imperium for a little while will say, well, hold on a second, isn't this ring just fundamentally weaker than the Beast Rebans from the first game? And you know what? You are entirely right. I can't say that you're wrong. Brutality is just fundamentally better, because if you've got that alliance, you're getting those extra troops. And be fair, brutality, when it is powered, is a nasty, nasty tool in the Beast arsenal. But in a way, I think the strength for Gurney is just the fact that Warmaster, it has a different context in this game. Obviously, you're enabling to power your passability, and that's obviously very, very good. But the thing that's a big change for Uprising is the way how combats work, and specifically, the second and third place rewards for combats are drastically superior in this game than they were in the base Dune Imperium. You would have a lot of third placer, for example, would be spies or a couple of troops, or nothing really that significant. A couple of troops, a couple of Solari even. Nothing particularly significant. In regards to, like, getting third person. Even some of the seconds aren't that strong either. But in this game, you get to looking through the Imperium deck here. You're looking, 2 spies, 3 spies from the troop here, 2 water and troops back. Lots of combats in this game give you troops back. And this is where Gurney can be a real nagging force, because he can very easily keep putting in forces with Warmaster and just be constantly recouping those troops, so that he's able to continue getting Always Smiling going, and he's just constantly putting pressure. Even if you're not winning a ton of fights with Gurney himself, if you consistently get in these, especially these second places, these add up very, very quickly and can kind of like effectively kind of almost mini snowball in a way. So you've always got resources and you're just constantly shutting your opponents out. Very, very powerful. But of course, similar to Beast Reban in the base game, is Gurney Halleck's raw ability to just absolutely push into opening conflicts and makes him really, really scary. Especially for leaders, say like Muad'Dib, for example. Of course, early on are trying to get access to the Fremen, are fighting for other rewards. Especially, and I have to highlight this one, this conflict specifically here, the Dagger conflict, because first place is that wild bump. It is enormous if this one comes out for battle style leaders, Muad'Dib and Gurney Halleck specifically, because both of them want to be getting to siege access to get worms going for different reasons. Obviously, Paul Atreides gets his passive intrigue draw and accumulates those as he goes when he put them in. But Gurney Halleck, as I said, if you're sending a ring to Hagar Basin, even with an empty garrison, you're basically getting this a passive off automatically. And for 1 water, that can definitely be really achievable. So, very, very scary stuff here. That's what kind of, as well, Gurney kind of satisfies a bit of the similar purpose that Beast did in the first game. If you have him, we'll talk about this a bit in a moment, but because he has those extra troops, it puts a lot of pressure on those early conflicts. So if you're sitting, I would say specifically, and you actually have a dagger card, I would argue you actually have even more reason to pick Gurney Halleck than you would do anyways, because if it is that dagger that comes out, you can go really, really heavy for it, and everyone knows you can go really, really heavy for it. And so if you can get this pair off, for example, get your matching point, get your Fremen access while you're doing it as well, you are absolutely off to the races. So, 4th up on our list here is going to be seat position for Gurney Halleck. Gurney occupies an interesting spot in that he is pretty solid pretty much anywhere, but where he sits does have an effect on kind of what you're trying to do with him. Gurney in the opening positions, first and second seat, are basically for looking to hit from an access. And obviously this is a big part for Gurney's strategy, and can be definitely very, very effective. Especially, again, as I said with Muad'Dib, if you get him the second seat somehow, if he gets passed down that far, and you can reliably just go Fremen round 1, Fremen round 2, siege worms, you're off to a winning start there for sure. And there's always know with that can't be a bad strategy. However, Gurney, as I mentioned, kind of occupies a bit of what Beast Raban does in the previous game, in that if you have him seated in third, and especially fourth position, it's really nasty for your opposition, especially if they're combat leaders. Like, if Muad'Dib's also going to get chosen there, he has to commit so heavily to try and win this combat, especially if it's, say, the influence combat to try and get hold of his throne and access. He has to put in everything, and that's something that you can mess around with him with as well. Of course, it is reliant on Gurney finding his Warmaster troop via his ring, and of course, you're only going to draw that about half the time. But again, the problem your opponents have is that they don't know when that 50% is going to be. You can very easily, as Gurney Halleck, maybe even consider, like, going, even accept contract first up if there's a decent contract here for some faction access, some money, that sort of thing. Adding more persuasion to your deck, and then you actually draw your ring, you go to a combat spot, and you just limp in a couple of troops, you've got your couple of daggers, just get always smiling off, you've got like a 6-7 persuasion hand, and you're going for some really, really big cards early on. I do joke with Gurney Halleck on stream about if you're doing a leader draft, if you don't know who to pick Gurney. And while that's kind of meant a little bit in jest, there is some truth to it. Gurney is just solid in all positions, and pretty much with most decks as well, depending on the Imperium. There's definitely some that will favor him a little bit more. Fremen Bonds can be really nasty for him, especially. But pretty much Gurney is he's just as solid gets. You can't really go wrong with him. He's going to offer you some value somewhere, even in just going in for combat and making people's life difficult. Doesn't mean that he's going to be an automatic route for success, but definitely compared to some of the more complex characters going, Gurney doesn't have to deal with that issue. Just, get consistent firepower going in, get always smiling. If you can buy a Spiceman's Flow, like off of sending a signet into Research Station, for example, especially if you've got it spied and get like free troops and free card draws, for example. If you can buy a Spiceman's Flow with always smiling alongside fighting for combats, that is really, really powerful. And that pretty much is my 5th wildcard tip for you guys. Play hybrid with Gurney Halleck where possible. This is something, again, I used to talk about a little bit in the base game with Beast Raban, who, of course, is very heavily suited and focused to just going all in for combat with his Brutality Ring. But one of the best ways to play this game is if you're managing to dip into both camps, buying decent cards or Spices Flows and competing for combat. And Gurney is just absolutely tuned to do just that. Warmaster is your war power, and then always smiling is allowing you to buy those decent cards. And definitely go all in with that with Gurney. Sometimes it's not always going to quite work out. Sometimes you've just got to get involved with forces. But if you're able to consistently, get the always smiling, build up a couple of decent deck cards. One thing I would say for Gurney as well is if you can manage to get a couple of trashes in the early game, that's really good. Obviously, Desert Tactics is an option, but sometimes you have to trash out of hand. If you get the Conflict, for example, which allows you to trash, I forget the name of it exactly, and if you can get first or second place of that, especially with Worm as Gurney Halleck, you are absolutely laughing. Incredibly, incredibly strong for Gurney, just improving his deck quality even quicker, and then you're just blasting your opponents off the field. And so that is my top 5 for Gurney Halleck. Hopefully we'll be able to use little tips and tricks to increase your share of the spoils on Arrakis, because with this man, there's a lot of booty to be taken. If you like what we do here on the channel, of course, you can support and follow us here on Hidden Assets. Be hugely appreciative. We're going to be continuing this series next time, having a look at Margot Fenring. So thank you all for watching. Take care of yourselves. Sorry this one was a little bit longer, but Gurney, there's a lot going on, actually, when you look at it. Take care. See you soon.